Hey everybody, this is PJ Riley from Competition Archery Media.
My name is Hugo Lowe.
Hello, I'm Christina Percoli from San Marino.
Greetings, this is Jay Barsh from the 107 Club.
I'm Ryan, I'm with Anchor Point Archery in Goodyear, Arizona.
We are community Barebow! This is for the Barebow Project! Go Barebow!
This is
the Barebow Project!
And this is the Barebow Project.
And this is the Barebow Project.
And you're watching the Barebow Project.
And you're watching the Barebow Project.
I'm Grayson Partlow, and this is the Barebow Project. I think that was an 8.
As if we haven't done that before. Welcome back to the Barebow Project and Peak Archery Project, because this is going to get a dual posting for the archery communities that follow those two separate podcasts, because one is more all encompassing, but lots of compound Olympic recurve. And then obviously Barebow Project is Barebow. But welcome back to the Barebow Project and this whole outfit, Mr. Buddy Touchsinky. How you doing, buddy?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. Thanks to you, actually, which is why you're here. So Buddy's been on the podcast before. We talked about, I'll link that episode in the details of this one on YouTube and all the formats once we get to it. But we're here to talk about recovery, and recovery specifically from injuries that prevent you from shooting. So as most of you know that follow me or have followed my journey in the last, it feels like it's been forever, probably 3 years now since I had a hernia surgery and a tumor removed a couple years ago. Then I have wisdom teeth, then that the following year, and then I had the ulnar tunnel syndrome, which was the surgery I had on the bottom of my elbow, which was the pain prior to surgery was horrendous. Buddy actually was treating me from Peak Integrative Medicine for months, and has helped me in many ways through the CrossFit Olympic weightlifting stuff, through archery. Like Buddy's always, and we grew up together as childhood friends and archery companions. So it all intertwines. But when I hit my second surgery for this is what this is about. I'll cut to the chase. When I had my second surgery with the hernia and the tumor that was removed in my left flank, Buddy was like, "Hey, I know you just had this. I just got this new device per se. It's like an integrative therapy type thing. And do you want to give it a go?" And I was like, "Absolutely. I'll do anything. I am in so much pain." And my wife talks about it all the time because people look at, even she mentioned it in one of her appointment with Evan over at St. Luke's. Oh, I shouldn't have said that. Whatever. And the one nurse was like, "Really? You guys did that?" And my wife was like, "Yeah." She's like, "My husband walked in there and couldn't move. He walked out and was normal." And that was only a couple days after surgery. It might have been the next day, actually. And that was red light therapy. So that kicked off this thing. And Buddy was like, "Hey, I want you to give this a solid go and give me 100% honest feedback on it." And I've sworn by it since, to the point where I went out and bought myself a little tiny one just for the other things. And I used that on my elbow prior to surgery and stuff. But the big one that you have on the bed is amazing. But anyways, moving forward, had the elbow surgery. Elbow surgery went well, but then, call it tennis elbow if you will. It still ends up being a tear in the elbow that was there. And, Buddy was like, "I know you're not shooting. I know you're still in pain. Come try, it's PEMF, right?
PEMF, yeah.
And again, there's this, it was the same, like, listen, this is, and we talked about it, gave me the details, which we'll get into. And let me tell you, people, if you suffer from shoulder, really anything, but archers out there, it's common, shoulders, elbows, wrists, stuff like that, pain, look this up from a provider. So with that being said, integrative therapies. Buddy, there's a couple of ways that you go about treating this stuff, or kind of there's stages to it. Can you run us through those stages, and let's talk about some of those I'm going to use the A word, alternative options, before diving into surgeries and shots and all that other stuff.
Yeah, I think this is great for your audience because oftentimes we'll have an injury and then kind of the two extremes. One extreme is, as dudes, we just kind of ignore it forever. And then by the time we go into someone, we're in quite a bit of pain. So it's really aggravated. It's really ticked off. So you see your doctor, and you might start with your family doctor. You might start with orthopedics. And it's one of those things where when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So if you go to family doc, their only way to address that is a medication, their prescription pad. So they either tell you to take stuff over the counter, or they write you a script for whether it's an anti-inflammatory, a pain reliever, a muscle relaxer. And that's pretty much it with that. Now, if you go back again and again a few more times, then they'll say, okay, we'll send you to either ortho or PT. If you're lucky, they'll send you to PT, or maybe recommend the chiropractor, like me, but that's probably less likely. But if you're lucky, they send you to PT, and you go to PT, and at least they can do some modalities there where they can use some of these interventions. And the usual ones that are used are things like they can use hands-on therapy, get a thumb in there, get an elbow in there, the manual therapy to break up the knots and adhesions in those tissues, get the blood flowing. A lot of times that's great. Stretches, exercises, all great. Or they'll use things like electric stim therapy to help with pain relief. They'll use ultrasound, which is like a deep heat to get in there and increase circulation. And that's the options they offer there. And a lot of times that works for a lot of people and does a good job. You end up at the orthopedic, same thing, hammer nail situation. They do surgeries, they do injections. So you're probably going to get recommendations for one of those two things, or more pain meds, or more like steroids or something like that. What we found is that, all right, let's start with first things first. Let's say you pick up the bow, you go like this, and you feel a little twinge in the shoulder. Probably something pretty minor, just a little muscle tweak. It might spasm a little bit, might get a little bit inflamed. There's lots of things you can do on your own. So one, you can rest it for a few days, a week or so. You can massage it yourself. You can ice it. You can use heat. You can alternate ice and heat, stretch it, work it out. I would say for most people, 9 times out of 10, they develop something that's going to help. If that doesn't work, then the next step would be to seek out care from, it could be PT, it could be a chiropractor, it could be a clinic like what we do, and use what I would call non-invasive therapy. So with medicine, with healthcare, you can go least invasive to most invasive. And of course, if the least invasive works, then obviously that's what you want to go for, because it's a lesser chance of side effects. So other than the stuff that PTs use, we would use some alternative things. And believe me when I say it, I was the biggest skeptic in these things, because as a chiropractor in this field, we get lots of companies trying to sell us crap every single day. It's like, all right, this is the next thing, best thing since sliced bread. So you hear about lots of things. And over the years, I've heard from patients that they might live somewhere else. I might hear from colleagues that start using these things and they say, look, check it out. So skeptical as I am, all right, red light therapy. I start to look at the research first, see what's out there. And there is actually some research out there. And it's not brand new. It goes back to the 60s and 70s, where usually in other countries in Europe, mainly, they're using these things.
I want to pause you for 1 second.
Yeah.
This actually goes back further than the red light. This goes back to the Gratson scraping.
Yeah.
Like, so Buddy is my chiropractor. People think the chiropractors kind of they just go in, they crack your back, your neck, and maybe some other stretches here and there, and that's it. Buddy started beating me up years ago, and we were lifting together a lot. And it was one of those things that he was like, hey, let me try this thing. It started with Gratson scraping. If you don't know what it is, you can look it up. This really isn't all about that, but it's muscle manipulation, like you talked about.
Yeah.
And it's from the surface. It's still from the surface. It's not, there's no, it's almost like the initial level outside of, or maybe in that first level of stuff. But that kind of was one of the things that for me, that and like a stim machine, those are like the first levels of like, I've never done this before. I never had this thing on me. I never know. And that turned into lacrosse balls and voodoo bands and all this other things that we have, then that transformed to the red light therapy. So go ahead. I just wanted to preface the conversation. Like, listen, this has been an evolving, you know, response to these things. And then as we get deeper into the weeds of injuries, well, we believe that, hey, there's therapies that are also deeper into the weeds. So go ahead. Sorry about that.
And part of that is we're getting older, man. So it's inevitable when you're
look
active, you get older, or whether sometimes when you're inactive and get older, you're going to have some of these injuries and pains. So I often joke, but if I'm serious in many ways, I'm looking for this stuff for me just as much as my patients. But another thing that drives me to look at these things and to even investigate these things, it's like, well, there's always that person you can't help. And you wonder, okay, there's got to be something out there to help them, or they're suffering, whether it's from chronic Lyme disease, they got, old injuries. It's something that can't help them. So that's why I get into a lot of this stuff. And, but you see these things like red light therapy, again, you look at that and you're like, okay, what's this? How can that possibly work? And you start looking at the research and it's like, okay, there's pretty good research behind them. I'm getting pretty good reports from people. I got to try it for myself. I got to try it on people here in our practice. And we do get those results like yourself, where you can't stand up straight because your abdomen's so tight and sore. 20 minutes. I didn't think it was going to do that, but 20 minutes under that thing, and it reduces the inflammation, gets the blood flowing to all the right areas, reduces the pain mediators or pain chemicals that your body releases that send signal to your brain to say, hey, something's wrong here, don't move. Well, that can be exaggerated or be a hyper response sometimes. So you want to calm that down. And that's what that red light therapy does. It does all those things. Yeah. And it allows you to stand up straight afterwards, having a lot less pain. I had a similar situation this past week, Saturday morning. I had a patient in a collision on the Gordon Knockle Trail, for those of you that are local. And the lap belt, he's a big guy, so lap belt across his belly basically compresses abdomen. Same thing, he couldn't stand up straight, lots of pain. 20 minutes on that, he said he's like at least 75%. And so there's that. There's something called PEMF, which is, again, it's going to sound really goofy, pulsed electromagnetic frequency therapy. I'm sorry.
I'm gonna do a video.
Field therapy.
I'm gonna do a video. So I'm gonna put it at the end of this episode. I'm gonna
so you sitting there.
I have to come in anyway. I'm gonna come over. I'm gonna take the video. I might have you video like me putting it on and how what it does and the sounds and you
can see the muscles twitch, and all it is, it's not, it works without it even touching you. Like you lean it against you just because you don't want to hold it out in front of you. Right. But it's not from the contact. It's just from that magnetic field that produces that electromagnetic field, and it stimulates those cells, and you can actually feel it vibrating the cells internally.
100% can.
And what that's doing is it's adding energy. It's energizing those cells, and cells are the basic units of life in our body. They make up our muscle. We have muscle cells that make up muscle. We have heart cells that make up heart tissue. We have liver cells that make up liver tissue. And those are like the little factories that are working together to get everything done that our body does. So just like a battery gets drained, those cells get drained. They don't function as well. It's because when we have an injury, we have swelling, we have congestion, you don't get good blood flow to that area. It just decreases that cellular function. So if we can increase that cellular function through something like red light therapy or PEMF, or moving it, or extra oxygen, there's like heat to increase circulation. There's lots of ways we can do that. But the PEMF is unique because it's like times 100 in terms of all those other things. And the way it works, it's like those cell phone chargers we have these days, where you set it on the pad, you don't plug it in, somehow that battery fills up and charges without touching. It's that electromagnetic field transfer that energy. So same way the PEMF does that as well. And but then the cell works better. If the cell can work better, it can heal faster, it can heal better. So that's been like, I've had it 6 weeks, I think, maybe not even that. And but it's become one of our go-to therapies. And not that this is all about PEMF, but I'm glad we're talking about this, because there's lots of things out there that can be helpful, that if you just go to your conventional doctor, not knocking against them because they're never taught it. So nothing against them at all. They're not taught about it. And then I start to wonder, because I see the effects it had on your elbow, and you can talk about how your pain went.
Well, I was gonna
tell about that. And then
I was gonna touch upon that. So diagnosis, I went to get an X-ray, did MRI, found the tear in the elbow. It's in the small tissues where the elbow attaches. Call it tennis elbow if you want. It was severe, like to the point where I had pain through if I would try to make any kind of of a grip, and I still feel a little bit, but it's definitely, I'll talk about that. I could not squeeze anything at all. And it was like, I was back to where I was when I had the tunnel syndrome. But it was on the top side instead of the bottom side. And, so got the MRI, and the doctor said, all right, well, here are your options. You can, and not in so many an order. He just said, here are your options. We can do a shot. Pain will probably go away, might not go away. Every time you stick a needle in there, it weakens that muscle. He said you can do is it PAP? What's the
PRP. Platelet rich
PRP?
plasma. Yeah.
Yep.
Which is
So
good.
that's where they take
Good.
your own blood, kind of shake it up, pull the platelets out of it or whatever, and then inject it back into that muscle. Again, you're still weakening it, but you're giving the muscle the fuel it needs to repair itself, per se, which you do as well. That's another thing that you can do through peak. And he said, and then if neither one of those work, it's surgery. I was like, I don't want to do any of those. I said, he was like, well, because you can treat it with anti-inflammatories, try to work on strengthening, and just hope that it goes away. That's what I was told. This is from a major hospital with orthopedic, whatever.
And at
And
that
I
point, you
said,
had the pain. How many months at this point have you had the pain? Because you've
so
already
that
been doing and
pain,
exercising it and taking anti-inflammatories. But
so
how long?
yeah, keep in mind that pain was existing in a smaller scale. It was just a burning sensation prior to my surgery. So that was part of the pain that I was having, but the major part was the tunnel syndrome issue. The hope, they gave me a shot in that side of my elbow when I had surgery. So when that was to help with just not dealing with that pain as well, the doctor did. So once that wore out 6 months later, roughly, and I started recovering, that's when the pain started coming back in the top of the elbow. So like that's I've had that for quite some time. Fast forward to post surgery, pain starts coming back. I start shooting again, getting ready for archery season, July, August. My elbow hurt so bad, I still wasn't shooting my hunting recurve. I was just pulling the compound because I can get past a certain point with the compound, then it's holding nothing. So it wasn't so bad. And I talked to you and I was like, dude, my elbow is freaking killing me again. And like on a scale of 1 to 10, the pain was like a 7, occasionally higher. And I have a pretty high pain tolerance. So I was like, I don't know what's going on. And you were like, hey, I was dealing with it. You're like, hey, come over and try this. Let's talk. And we should explain what it is. And I started it. First, right immediately after I did my first treatment, I was sore, but I wasn't in pain. I was just sore. The following day was the first time that I was nearly pain-free in a long time. It's not a treatment that like you go pain-free, but then it's slowly like the muscle, that wears off a little bit and then it goes back. I will tell you, to this day, after 6 weeks, I think you had just gotten it, or maybe it's 5 weeks at this point. After that time frame, I will tell you that right now, the max pain that I get is maybe a 2 or 3 since that time. And I've consistently done at least 2 to 3 sessions a week. I think I did 1 session last week. I need to get back in. So it's working. Long term, it's working, but you have to be patient with it. You can't be like, oh, I'm going to do 3 sessions or do 1 session or maybe a second session, like 1 session 1 week and then 1 session the following week. And then like, oh, I'm not noticing anything.
But with that said, that depends, because you're in a fairly extreme case because you actually have a tear. And when we first started this, you didn't have the MRI results yet, so we didn't know what it was.
Right. True.
But I've had other people where I had one guy, he went to the ER 2 days prior to coming in here because his shoulder pain was that bad. He's a contractor, he tweaked it, self-employed, and his wife knows me and she says, hey, do you think it'll help? I said, let's give it a shot. And 1 treatment, he was good. He came back the next week just for good measure, but he really didn't have to.
Yeah.
And that was a minor tweak. I mean, the pain was bad enough that he went to the ER. It was like 8 or 9 out of 10 that one day, or for those couple of days. And as soon as he had it done, within an hour, it eased up. So if it's something more minor and you catch it early, it just depends on the extent of the injury. Yours is a tear, so it will take time for that to heal, but I think it'll get there without surgery like they were originally expecting to have to do.
And that's exactly what was suggested was shot, once shot, stop working, surgery. That was my only option. And I was like, yeah, it's not good enough.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that. Or the platelet stuff. But you know, again, it's still shots. You're sticking a needle in that muscle. Like I don't want to do that. If I can avoid that, I'm going to avoid it.
Yeah, the PRP would actually be a great next step if this didn't work, and we can talk more about that in a second. But I want to touch on like, because I got this machine, saw your results, and had 50 to 100 people since, because I've just been promoting and basically giving away treatments just to try it out and see what the results are and get word of mouth going.
Yeah.
But after 2 or 3 weeks of having that, and funny part was I was expecting to send it back after 30 days because I got a 30-day trial.
Yeah.
And it's pretty expensive.
And now you own 2 of them.
Yeah. So after 2 weeks, he's like, "How you liking it?" And I said, "You know what? I'm going to keep this one, I think, long term." And I said, "Can you give me a deal on a second one?" And he took a couple bucks off the price. So I committed to the second one. We have 2 here now, and they're booked up during like after work hours. So I'm glad I got it. But then I started thinking, like, why doesn't every chiropractor, PT, pain management center have one of these things? Because I even saw a guy, he said failed back surgeries, like he's in pain all the time, and a couple sessions on it. Now he's an extreme case too, but he's like 60-70% better. Where in the past 5 years, like he's had nothing to help. Like he was addicted to oxys for a while, got off those. So I'm thinking, like, why aren't these used more often? And I think the only answer I can come up with is insurance doesn't cover it. So that leads me to the point. Same thing with red light therapy. Same things like we got hyperbaric, a chamber here, and people think like they have this great insurance and like everything's covered, but you're only getting presented with what's covered, and there's a world of stuff out there. Yeah, PRP is one of those things too. And I'm actually surprised that the surgeon recommended that, because for the longest time,
well, they cover it
unless they did it, none of them would really promote it, and they would say like, "Oh, there's not a lot of research for it."
I misspoke. Insurance doesn't cover it, but because they must buy it in some large capacity, the kits or however they do it,
they get a pretty good deal. Yeah,
I get a good deal, and we talked about that because you know, where a smaller provider,
their price was pretty good.
Yeah, smaller provider, you don't get that opportunity, whereas this is a large outfit, they actually get that opportunity. And I'm still not unopposed to trying it, but you know, still that for the hospital, for that provider, you know, it's a huge difference between what a smaller provider can do the exact same treatment for versus a larger provider who maybe buys by volume. And I think that also leads to I'm not getting into conspiracy theories now, but that also probably leads into the big pharma insurance, that whatever you want to call it, that they got going on, and saying like, hey, you know, you start doing these alternative treatments, people aren't buying as much medication, you know, and stuff like that. But anyways, I don't want to go down that road. That's not a archery related podcast. That's a Joe Rogan related podcast.
Yeah, but here's an example of your situation. Like a round of injections for you, like cortisone shots, I'm guessing like they probably get like 600 to 800, maybe $1,000. I mean, you can get like 20 to 30 of these treatments for that, and most people will be better in probably the first 4 or 5. So for like a couple $100, you solve the problem. And is there anything in there? I don't know if it's even that much of a conspiracy. I think it's just that, okay, insurance doesn't cover it. They're afraid that like make you pay out of pocket, or have you say, hey, this isn't covered, you need to pay cash for it. It's not part of their business model. And so they don't think of it. And it's not in like their training. So when an orthopedist is training, he's not training alongside people that are using these modalities. So he's not familiar with it. And when they go to the research, these things aren't really research, because they do a proper research. Now there's research on it, the physiological effects, but as far as the large scale research that they're used to seeing for like medications and injections, like these cost millions and millions of dollars. And when you have a company that's really only selling these machines, I mean, they're pricey, but they're in the thousands, not hundreds of thousands or millions in profits. You're just not going to fund that study easily. So they look at it as, all right, I didn't train with it, I'm unfamiliar with it. It sounds kind of goofy, like it sounded goofy to me before I tried it.
Sure. Yeah.
And the research is like, there's some, but there's not a lot. So I'm not going to recommend it, and I don't feel comfortable recommending it. So they just don't. So when you go there with that problem, again, it goes back to, they know these 2 or 3 things. That's what you're going to be presented with. and you don't know that there's a world of other stuff out there. So if you take one thing away from this particular podcast episode, it's there's other options out there that your trusted orthopedist, I don't care if he's at the best orthopedic institute in the nation, their training's their training, they don't know what they don't know. But that's where you have to go out and advocate for yourself and look into some of these things yourself.
Yeah. So moving forward, what we talked about red light therapy, we talked about the platelet replacement, we talked about PEMF. But any other things? I know you, and I don't know a lot about it. I know chiropractic care is super important. You should be doing that if possible, probably weekly or at least monthly at a minimum. If
Some
you're
sort of body work, massage therapy, chiropractic,
yeah,
self-care, like yoga, whatever, something to work on the muscles of your body so that they stay in good condition.
yeah. What about the hyperbaric chamber? Is that what you have?
Yeah, so hyperbaric chamber, and I don't know if it would apply to like the average archery injury, but if like someone like say they had like spinal injury, because people do get neck herniations, low back herniations where they can't stand upright because the pain shoots down their legs. They might have had like back surgery and that failed, so they're in chronic pain.
Oh, I can guarantee you that there's archers out there that are shooting
Yeah.
in chronic pain. I guarantee you.
Yeah. Or Lyme disease is prevalent, like super prevalent in this population.
Really?
Probably 100 too if you're archery, or you're doing 3D shoots, you're outdoors, you're an outdoorsy type person, I guess I should say. It's probably more often than not in this population of people. And chronic Lyme disease can really affect the joints, can cause brain fog, fatigue, loss of focus. So that's where hyperbarics can help. And that's one of those things that something else that's been around for a long time. Most of the time we associate it with the hospital chambers. They're hard chambers. You go in a room like the size of I'm in now, you get 6 people in there, you pressurize it, and it's only indicated for a handful of conditions. So like carbon monoxide poisoning, severe burns over more than a certain percentage of the body, stuff like that. So very expensive if you have to pay out of pocket because they're billing insurance and that's it. So it's not even used as an option for a lot of people. But over the years, they've developed the soft-sided chambers, and instead of paying $100K plus to have a chamber in your facility, it's in the $20,000 to $40,000 range. So it makes it more accessible. Now they don't pressurize as much, but they still have similar effects. So in short, what they do is the increased pressure allows the oxygen to dissolve in the liquid part of the blood. So you can carry up to 50% more. So to put it in different terms,
Okay.
a lot of people are probably familiar with pulse ox. And
Sure.
you look at that thing, it says 96% saturated. So that's how much oxygen is saturated, or how much of the red blood cells are saturated by oxygen. 96, 97, 98% is usually the number. So even if you breathe in 100% oxygen, you're only getting 3 or 4 more percentage points. Whereas a soft-sided chamber will get you up to 50% more. So now you have more oxygen in the blood, more period. And you have it dissolved in the liquid part of the blood. So now it can get more places, because normally a red blood cell has to take the oxygen molecule, take it to the tissue, drop it off. Well, a red blood cell is pretty small, it's microscopic, but it's still a certain size. Whereas the dissolved oxygen in the dissolved gas in the blood can get more places because it just travels through the blood, dissolved in the liquid, and then diffuses out to the tissues where it needs to go. So that means if you have lots of scar tissue because you have lots of surgery or injury around your spine, or you have a traumatic brain injury, concussion, you've got scar tissue around that brain tissue, and the blood flow can't get there and the oxygen can't get there as efficiently, then it starts to help with a lot of those things. So the same thing, the same reason why it helps heal those burns, heal those severe wounds, those diabetic ulcers that won't heal. It also helps other things. So it's not like just because the FDA says it's approved for these things, that those physiological effects don't occur in all other sorts of types of injuries and issues that people have.
Huh. Man, you got into the weeds on this one. You're way past my comprehension. I mean, I get some of it, but that's incredible. And I haven't used that chamber yet. We may have to talk about that, moving forward and document some of it. I think that's one of the cool things about the podcast world. Like, you can take these opportunities. This podcast is international. It's cool. And I have friends, Ben Sitar, that owns XS Wings. Like, he believes in alternative treatments and stuff. We conversate back and forth. He's also a sponsor of the podcast. He's I think he's in the Netherlands, if I remember correctly. You know, and we talk back and forth about this stuff all the time. And I think, and archers of all people, especially barebow archers, um, they're definitely more open-minded to try to do things to whatever it takes to keep them behind a bow. You know, long bouts of physical therapy and shots are not a good recipe for longevity. So just physical therapy and shots in your arm or your knee or your back or whatever is not the direction to go if
Well,
you
let's
can
talk about
live
let's talk
long.
about why for just a split second.
Go ahead, do
I
it.
won't get too deep into that, but so what those shots are doing, or if you're taking Advil or Tylenol, or not Tylenol necessarily, any of the anti-inflammatories, so Advil, aspirin, Motrin, Aleve, things like that. So you're interfering with the inflammatory process that's happening around that area. So let's use your elbow again as an example. So you have the injury there, inflammation happens. People think inflammation is bad, so we got to ice it to get rid of the inflammation, or we got to take a medication or inject it to get rid of the inflammation. Inflammation is the healing process.
Right.
So yeah, short term, it'll calm that down, that inflammation, so it won't feel as bad, but you're interfering with the body's ability to break down the damaged tissue and rebuild healthy tissue again. That's why the PRP works so well. So PRP, we take the blood out, spin it down, concentrate the platelets, and platelets are what triggers the inflammatory reaction. So actually, when you have that done, it hurts like hell. I've had it done. It hurts like hell for the first 2 days because it inflames the hell out of it. But what's happening with inflammation is it gets red, swollen, and puffy because more bloods go in that area, more white blood cells, more platelets, which ultimately break down, digest, dissolve the damaged tissue, and then start rebuilding that healthy tissue again. So if you inject it, if you ice it too much, if you take those anti-inflammatories, you're interfering with that process. So by getting those shots, you're just interfering. So it incompletely heals. Now it might ultimately stay calm and calm down, but then that makes it much more prone to do something again, and boom, you injure it again, and then you start the whole process over again. Versus doing one of these therapies that help accentuate that inflammatory or that healing process again. Whether it's so that's why the scraping works too. The
Right.
grafting technique, it inflames the area in a controlled manner, brings fresh blood, and then breaks down the scar tissue. But it's all about working with our body instead of working against it. So, and that's the same thing with all injuries or illnesses. It's like, well, why do you have a fever? And do you really need to bring it down?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it helps you feel more comfortable to take a Tylenol to bring down the fever from 101 to back down to 98, but
Right.
your body's raising the temperature for a reason to fight that infection. So in the field that I work in integrative medicine, functional medicine, whatever you want to call it,
Sure.
it's about working along with the body to help accentuate the healing response versus trying to shut it down with a pill or an injection.
Right. It's perfect. I mean, we covered everything and more of what I wanted to cover like in this discussion, but I think the most important thing that I wanted people to know about is that this stuff exists.
Yes.
Unless, excuse me, unless you have access to somebody like yourself who is a friend of mine, someone that I've known for years, and have these conversations, and you know, you might not know, and archery people 100% are going through, you know, just even if it's something where you're a competitor. This is outside of the injury world. Even if you're a competitor and you are shooting high volume of arrows getting ready for a large competition, or you're training real hard. I got a guy, the one episode we talked about 30 days of practice, 30 minutes of practice for 30 days. So like it's not high, super high volume, but like 30 days straight in a row is still a lot. Maybe you're looking for ways to recover and be more ready for that tournament with that high volume. And these things all can actually help with that as well. You're not necessarily treating a specific thing, but it's something that helps you from a recovery standpoint. Or even if you're juggling fitness, exercise on a high and a high velocity versus and shooting at the same time, you can use these things as recovery options as well if you're prepared to spend the time. And yes, money, everything costs money. So there's other ways to look at the use of these, whereas you're not going to go to a doctor because you're trying to increase your ability to recover from whatever it is you're recovering from, or just, you know, crazy hiking trips, crazy hunting trips. stuff like that. So, just maybe in some capacity, even illness. I don't know. I don't know to what extent some of that stuff will help, but like the hyperbaric chamber and whatnot. But excuse me, man, I got a tickle in my throat. Yeah, that's good, man. Anything else that you think we should get into, or I want to get into where people can find you and maybe they have questions or need some consults or something. But
Yeah, no, the only thing I add based on what you said is there's a reason, like you look at a lot of these pro sports teams, NFL teams, they have things like PEMF. You don't hear about it, but just working through the company that I bought my unit through, I see like, oh, this football team has it, that football team has it. Going back to when the Eagles were in the Super Bowl, not the one that won, the one they lost. I think it was like 2009, or it was when Terrell Owens got hurt like a month before the Super Bowl,
oh
and they
yeah, I remember
never
that.
play. He was basically sleeping. Now you shouldn't use it for more than an hour at a time. You can do it twice a day, but he was actually sleeping in the hyperbaric chamber, and that's where I first heard about it being available in these soft chambers, these portable chambers. So even he was using it back then to help recover, and he did play in that Super Bowl, if I remember
Yeah.
correctly, and did okay.
Yeah.
Did win, but so yeah, there's a reason. Like there's the performance athletes are using these things, and there's a reason why. And it's not all about just treating yourself when you do have a bad problem. It's about maybe, all right, you're starting to get sore, you're starting to get tight, address it then, and don't wait. Because if the muscle tightens up, then that's when you're more likely to tweak it. Or if you pull it back the wrong way and your shoulder's tight, if the shoulder is nice and loose and everything is robust and strong and flexible, like you can put up with a lot and it'll be fine. But it's when it gets really tight, that's when it makes it easy just to make that wrong movement. The next thing you know, it's like flared up and it's fired up and it's hurting you.
Yeah, it's perfect. That's good stuff, man. I this went in such a better direction than I even anticipated, because we're pretty good about flow, but like you hit every point and did not disappoint. I think this is also stuff that in the archery world nobody talks about it. You're never going to hear anything about it from anybody on any podcast, anything. They just talk about shooting a crap ton of arrows, and they want to talk about tuning, and they want to talk about their form. And the one thing that I've learned through this journey of surgeries and illness and everything that's happened is that like you're never going to shoot at 100% the best version of yourself if you have all of this other stuff happening. Yeah, you can shoot good when you're sick every once in a while, but you can't keep up that pace. Or, if you have like nagging injuries and stuff, and we talk in Barebow about target panic all the time, because it's like trad, Barebow are the things that we do where we have to deal with target panic head on and in its full force. And there's no way that anyone will ever convince me that if you have nagging injuries, issues with your back, issues with your shoulders, issues with your neck, whatever, and you have these things going on, that you can truly and fully deal with that head-on battle of target panic shooting competitive barebow archery. And that's and that probably goes to compound and Olympic recurve just the same, just we do it at a higher level, a more difficult level. But that's one of the things, like I want people to think about those things when they're training, when they're competing and stuff, and realize, hey, there's other options out there, and there's things that you can do to help you get back behind the bow faster, or more often if you're dealing with injuries. So all right, man. Where can everybody follow you? Maybe get some consults, or if they need, they want to bounce up. Maybe they're not that far away and they're willing to travel for treatment. Where can they contact you?
Yeah, so this is easy. I always like to say I'm the only buddy Touchsinky in the world, and it's spelled Touch in Sky, Touchinsky. So I'm mainly on Facebook. I mean, I have accounts in like I don't know, X and LinkedIn and some of those other ones. I'm just not as active on those. But you can find me there. Our Facebook page, where you can learn about a lot of these therapies, because I'll put out informational posts on these. It's Peak Integrative Medicine. And you got us because we're located in Pennsylvania. And you'll see some of our information there. So you can follow and give our page a like. And if you're in Pennsylvania, I can treat anyone in Pennsylvania, whether that is the physical stuff. So like with the injuries and stuff we talked about today, we're about an hour and a half northwest of Philly. And I'll often have people come out for a second opinion and get some of these treatments just to try to figure out what their problem is. So I know it might be a little bit of a drive, but we can do those consultations there. and peakintegrative.med.com is our website. And then we also do functional medicine in terms of being proactive about our health. So we do full comprehensive blood work, and we try to find out what nutrients you need. We can do gut health. We can do chronic illnesses, chronic Lyme disease, long COVID. We really get into a lot of that different stuff. Autoimmunity, we can help out. We do a really good job with that, addressing diet, lifestyle, and using some different therapies than we talked about today, more on the biochemical side. So like the internal medical type stuff, and we can help you with that stuff as well.
Outstanding. Well, thanks so much for being a guest once again. And I have a feeling this is going to lead. We just said it last time. Technically, this is part 2 in some ways, but I'm sure this will, as opportunities come and things change, and you make updates and you learn things. You know, you were a skeptic. You were so much of a skeptic. You're like, Frank, I need you to try this out. I want your honest opinion. And you're no longer a skeptic. So that says something for these treatments and the things that, and the changes that people are going through. And myself, I'm a testament to multiple, but specifically with the elbow issue, the PEMF. So it's just now we're comfortable, like, kind of putting it out there and talking about it. Like, hey, this is real. This is real. If you're having issues, look it up. We'll figure it out from there. But anyways, all right, buddy, hang out for a second. Everyone else, thank you for joining us on the Barebow Project, and we will see you next episode.
Coming out to get you. Pray to God it with you. Coming out to get you. Pray to God it with you. Coming out to get you. Yeah, try to tell you how it is. I made them sacrifice because I met the plan out exactly how I wanted to live. I was doing